Welcome to You Talk Sports, the show where you get to be in the show. Tonight, we are going to be breaking down all of the first round matchups for March Madness. This is the place to be if you want to get the insights you need to win your tournament. And if you've been listening in to other pregame shows, maybe the podcasts or on ESPN, and you've been thinking, man, I would love to give my 2 cents on this. I'd love to be a part of the conversation. I'd love to ask a question. That's what we do here at You Talk Sports. And so if you'd like to join us here on Zoom, just leave us a comment in the YouTube live stream chat saying Zoom, and we will drop you the link to come on live and join us. Right now, I see here joining us are Yolanda and Jeremiah. Good to see both of you. I'm sure you are as excited for this March Madness as I am. This is my favorite time of year. I think it is for any sports fan, even though I don't even start watching college football until after the Super Bowl. But I watched a lot of almost all the games during conference tournament week. So I have laid eyes on a lot of these teams. Since the Super Bowl ended about a month ago, we've been watching the games every night. And so we've got a lot of firsthand knowledge here, that's going to be different than just researching, looking at teams' records, looking at teams' stats. That's what everybody does. And if you want to get the edge and win your bracket at home or our bracket, we're having our own contest here. I'm going to give you guys the link to, then this is the place to be. And so as we always do, we're going to go around the horn and get takes from people that are here on Zoom. And what I want to start with tonight is who's on your short list of teams that you think could win the national title. Because when you start filling out your bracket, we're going to talk strategy a lot tonight, as well as dive into specific research on the first round games. But you want to start with the end in mind. Who are the teams that you think are capable of winning a national title? Because it is very rare, if we look historically, that a team comes out of complete nowhere and wins a national title. So first you identify your short list of teams that you think could win. And what makes this experience so valuable, or if you're watching this on the replay, so valuable for you to listen in, is we're going to get takes from all different opinions. We're not all going to agree with each other. We're not going to yell at each other. This isn't Stephen A. Smith. We're not here making up stuff just to sound outrageous like he does. But what we're doing is hearing from different people around the world. We got West Coast people here, East Coast people, SEC people, Big 12 people here. And we'd love to have you here and give your take and have you get to enjoy March Madness even more, but also contribute to all of our success. That's what we do here every night at You Talk Sports. This week, we are live every night at 9 p.m. Eastern, getting geared up for March Madness, and then we'll be watching the actual games together. So if you would like to join us here on Zoom, just leave a comment saying Zoom. And for those of you that are here on Zoom, I just put the YouTube chat into the link for YouTube into the Zoom chat. If you could make sure that you're over there on YouTube as well, pull it up in a different device, your mobile device, or I think that's the best way to do it, is to have it on a mobile device over on YouTube, and then have Zoom here on your computer. All right, so let's go first to Jeremiah. Give us your short list. Who are the teams, and we're not going to get into any reasons yet because I want to just fly through this segment, but who are the teams you think are capable of winning the national championship?
Short list, I got Kentucky and Houston coming out of the same bracket. So I like one of those two teams. We'll get to why in a little bit.
Okay, so Kentucky and Houston. All right, let's go next to Yolanda. Which teams do you feel are capable of winning the national title this year?
Well, I'm going to go with a big underdog because they're not favored this year, so they don't have anything on their backs. I think possibly the Zags, and then I'm going to go with Houston, and then I'm going to
Who
go
was
with
the first team?
the Zags, Gonzaga,
Oh, Gonzaga. Okay, Gonzaga. Okay, so
and
Gonzaga,
then I'm going to and then Houston, and then UNC,
and then UNC.
North Carolina.
Okay, yeah, and at this point, we're not looking at any matchups. We're just kind of making our short list And this is what you want to do at home, is identify who are the teams you think are capable of winning the national title. Let's hear next from David. Who do you think is capable of winning the national title?
Yeah, for sure. So I know on the show previously we've talked about like the formula. So that formula short list, without getting into the formula itself, is Arizona, Purdue, Houston, UConn, Marquette, and North Carolina.
Okay. And Cameron, who do you feel is capable of winning the national title?
UConn, Purdue, and Houston.
UConn, Purdue, and Houston. Okay, sounds good. And I'll give you guys mine. And then while I'm doing this, if you could go over to the YouTube chat and put in there at this point, because our picks may change a million times by the time we get to the Thursday. And I'm also assuming you're like me. Hey, ESPN gives you 25 brackets. I'm going to fill out 25 scenarios. But go ahead and put into YouTube who you're picking as your national champion at this point. And I'll put mine in there. So I am picking Houston at this point. I feel like Houston is a team that has been ascending over the last 4 years. They've been in contention. Last year, they got knocked off. They were a number 1 seed. Everyone was kind of picking them last year. They went to the Final Four as a surprise team 2 years ago, had a Final 8 run, and now they're in the Big 12 this year. So I'm picking Houston as my national champion. But on my short list of who could win a national championship, I have Houston, and North Carolina is on my short list. They have 2 players back from the team that made it all the way to the finals before, and a coach who's been there before. UConn is the defending champion, so they are capable of winning the national title, in my opinion. I like as a fourth one, Iowa State. I think if you're saying Houston's capable of winning it, well, Iowa State just pummeled Houston. So by default, they have to be capable of winning the national title as well. So those are my 4 teams that I feel are capable of winning the national title. Good to see Will hop in here. Alex, rather, for our first exercise, our first thing we're doing is just short list, not reasons why, but just who do you feel is capable of winning the national title?
How many teams are you looking for me to give there, Greg?
However many you think are capable. In my mind, it's 4. Some people only had 2. Some people have had 6. It just, whatever teams you think are capable. A team usually doesn't come out of nowhere and win the national title.
Yep. Do you want me to name them? I have a couple.
Yeah.
Obviously 2 Big 12 teams, the 1 seed Houston and Iowa State. I think I'm going to go with Iowa State to win it all. And I think, I mean, obviously all the 1 seeds are capable of it. I've preached before. I think Purdue gets upset first out of the 1 seeds. Just some deeper seeds. I think Marquette has the talent to win it. And then I would say I'll give one more team. I think Creighton as well.
Okay, so let's go ahead and put those picks, who your pick is, in the YouTube chat here. As you can see, we've got some UNC, Kentucky, Houston, as far as picks that are capable of winning the national title. Now, there's lots of ways to go about making your picks, but one of, I think, the most powerful sites and strategic sites that I like to use is called bracketresearch.com. And so we're going to look at what they say and how what they say matches up to what we've been saying. So according to their research, there are 4 teams that are capable of winning the national title. And if the team you think is capable happens to be one of these teams, that's a good sign. That's a match. They think it is and you think it is. That's probably a sign that you would want to lean towards that team. And the key to winning any national any tournament, if you're going to put in multiple entries, for example, in our tournament, we're allowing 10 entries per person, and you get the most points for winning the champion. So what really makes sense is not to like tinker with your first round picks, to essentially make those the same across the board. Just put your best picks into those and then start to tinker at either the Final Four or, better yet, the championship round. And that's what's going to give you the best odds at winning when you have multiple entries. All right, so this is not necessarily multiple entry. This is just this site's, but they are very research driven, very data driven. That's part of what I really like about them. So the first criteria that they put out here is a team that has a winning a winning record on the road or neutral sites. Very interesting, right? And if you read this, they went back to the past 20 years NCAA tournaments, and this is the criteria that they all had in common, 100%. So if you're missing one of these things, the odds statistically are very much against you being able to win the national title. Obviously, anything's possible in March Madness, but it's interesting that these things were here, right? So this winning record on road and neutral sites, that gets it down. There was only 4 teams that had all of their criteria, and here they are according to this site. So Houston, Connecticut, Purdue, who's not on my list, I don't like the big man, and Tennessee, who I do like a lot, but I don't think they're capable of winning the national title. So 3 teams so far are close, according to this. North Carolina, Iowa State, and Duke each have 1 red flag. So they're missing one of these category rankings. In fact, it says that North Carolina and Duke, really the only one they're missing is that their conference is not rated as highly this year. These teams have 2 red flags, Arizona, Auburn, and Illinois. So, and likely, by the way, if they're not winning the national title, that likely means they're in the running for a Final Four team. So these are your best bets to make the Final Four. These teams have 2 red flags. So they're missing 2 or more of the major components. Of the top 4 seeds, there was only 2 teams. And I thought that, to me, this was really interesting and kind of solidified this for me. But there was only 2 teams that had a 4 seed or higher that were missing 3 or more red flags. The rest of these teams were all solid in these things, which in a way is proof of it. And these are likely the teams that are most susceptible to upsets as well. So I found that really interesting. They did an equal breakdown for the Final Four. So this time we're going to go around the horn, and let's have each person share at this point who you're projecting to the Final Four. And if you've looked at the brackets, great. You can go by that. If you haven't looked at the brackets yet, don't worry. Just give us your best 4 teams. So let's go first to Will this time. Great to see you hopping up on here, Will. Again, if you're watching us on YouTube and you'd like to join us on Zoom, go ahead and just comment saying Zoom and we'll drop you the link. Will, who's your Final Four at this point? And we're not giving reasons why. We're just going rapid fire through.
Okay. Come back to me. I got to pull it up again real quick.
All right, sure. Sounds good. We'll go next to Cameron. Oh, you're on mute, Cameron.
Yep, that's my bad, y'all. Okay, so what I was saying was I got the number 1 overall seed making the Final Four. Then I got number 2 overall seed and the Houston Cougars making it. And then I think that Purdue is going to pull a 2019 Virginia. They got upset in the first round, and then they came back and won it all the next. So, and I think Purdue's got a pretty easy path. And then I'll have to look at the 4th one, but I think maybe Kentucky can make it. I don't know where Kentucky is. I have to look at one of the regions of the bracket, but those are my 3 for sure.
Okay, so 3 number 1s: Purdue, UConn, and Houston, and then Kentucky if the brackets fit as your top 4. All right, sounds good. Let's hear next from David. Who's your Final Four at this point?
Yeah, I've got UConn and UNC, Kentucky, and then I keep flip-flopping between Purdue and Tennessee.
UConn, UNC,
Kentucky,
and
then
Purdue.
either Purdue or Tennessee. Right now I'm leaning Tennessee, but that might change in 5 minutes, so who knows?
Hey, that's what we're here to do, to go deep dive. And it's good to be open-minded that things could change or evolve based on what we're seeing. Alex, who's your Final Four?
Tennessee, Houston, Illinois, and North Carolina.
Tennessee. Okay, so number 2, Houston at number 1, Illinois at number 2, and North Carolina at number 1.
Illinois is
Okay.
number 3, by the way.
Who is it?
Illinois is number 3.
Oh, Illinois is at 3. You're right. All right. Next up is Yolanda. Who do you like for the Final Four, Yolanda? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay. I am still marinating over this bracket, but right now I have UConn, UNC, and Tennessee, and that's it.
UConn, UNC, and Tennessee. Okay. And what we're really looking for here is some consensus, right? As some of us start to hear this, it kind of reinforces some of our picks. It's interesting to hear what everyone sees so far. All right, and next up is Jeremiah.
I got North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Iowa State.
North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Iowa State. Okay, sounds good. And for me, I have Iowa State, North Carolina, Houston, and Tennessee. So a lot of similarities from what we're picking here. And all right, so let's look and see what bracket research had to
I
say
think the
about
one
how
I
to
would
pick the
change
Final
is
Four.
Arizona. I like Arizona a lot.
Arizona,
That's the
okay.
one I might add. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, Arizona sounds good. I mean, they're a 2 seed, right? So
Yeah.
all right, so let's go over to where we were. I think this is the article we just finished. Next is the Final Four contenders from bracketresearch.com here. So the Final Four, this what they recommend, and I think this makes a lot of sense logically, is to look at do a process of elimination of teams that cannot make the Final Four, that are not likely to make the Final Four. And so first off, they talk about that a 12 or more seed has never reached the Final Four. And that trend continues. So next, they look at road neutral site record. So Final Four teams are proven road warriors. We talked about this before. They typically have a winning record in the on the road. And so these are some interesting teams. None of us pick these teams, but it can be tempting to kind of pick some of these teams. And the seeding kind of reflects this. Next, this is power ratings amongst the 80 Final Four teams. There's a few ratings that are significant floor climbers. So here again, based on their statistical data, are teams to eliminate. These teams are eliminated based on field goal percentage, based on rebounds. I thought this was really interesting, that rebounding can be a factor, because I think a lot of us, like myself, tend to look for guard-driven teams. Guards make the big shots at the end. The teams with the big centers seem to get knocked off a lot. But you want a guard-driven team, but not a team that is not effective at rebounding. And that's a potential flaw in Marquette to consider. Again, most of these teams were probably not considering defensive efficiency. Again, probably not considering these teams. The official list of Final Four candidates, I think this is everyone who's on our list. I was surprised to see that Clemson was on there. I didn't even think Clemson really should have made the tournament, to be honest. We've kind of moved on from that conversation from yesterday. So interesting to see FAU back on here. Obviously, they have a lot of people that are back. Go ahead, Will. Did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I'm actually leaning, and that encourages me. I'm actually leaning towards San Diego State. I don't think it's crazy for them to make a Final Four run. I think they have a lot of what it takes, and they were a part of that group. So
yeah, I mean, they made it all the way to the championship game last year, right? Have you watched them at all? Have you laid eyes on them at all?
Yeah, so they actually, I was looking, they actually have the number 3 rated strength of schedule, which is pretty crazy for a team in that conference. Their strength of schedule said.
Have you laid eyes on them at all? Have you watched them play at all?
Yeah, they have one really good player who's averaging like 20 points a game. And they have a really good forward who can kind of do it all. And then I think they have a similar team as last year.
Yeah. I watched their conference tournament, and my take on them is they have one main player, and he's a post player. This guy looks like The Rock, the movie star, right? He's a beast, and he makes his free throws, and he's unstoppable down low. But that being said, they lost that conference championship game to New Mexico because they were pretty much a one-man show. And I don't like teams that are led by a big man. And and B, the fact that they lost that game, I think kind of exposed them to me. It's interesting. If you watch that same game, I came away loving New Mexico after that game, which is Rick Pitino's son's team. So I mean, this is why it's good for us to have different conversations, because the last thing any of us want is if you pick San Diego State to go all, even Final Four and they lose real early, that's like the kiss of death, right? We for sure want to avoid, losing all those points. And that's something to consider. Like, as we break down some of these games, I'm pretty confident that FAU has a good chance against UConn, but does it really make sense for me to pick FAU there? If I get it right, I get 2 points, right? If I get it wrong, I'm like falling behind everyone who's picking UConn to go all the way. So maybe but what I'll do strategically is I start to stack up the games I think a team like UConn could lose. And I think they could lose to FAU. And then I think they could lose to Auburn in the next round. And it's like, now you got 2 games you could very well lose. They got a really hard draw. That makes me like less inclined to pick them to go all the way, especially then their third game is going to be against the winner of that Illinois-Iowa State. So to me, they have like a brutal run of teams. Any one of those could knock them off. I take that into consideration as kind of like each of those games is a coin flip, right? And if you have to flip a coin 3 times and one tails and you're out, the odds are one of those is going to go wrong. That's kind of what we want to do in this process of elimination. Is how we look at these games. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I know that you've been pretty high on FAU, but statistically, you could make the argument they shouldn't have even made the tournament, actually. And I have Northwestern. If Northwestern gets fully healthy, which is 50-50, that's an easy upset pick, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is why it's good to hear these things. Although I don't really go by statistics. I do look at record, and then I go with the eye test. What I've seen of these teams, and this FAU team has everyone back from last year's Final Four team, and they have a big guy who can match up against UConn's big guy. I mean, I hope they're not looking past Northwestern, because if they're healthy, like you said, they can beat anybody.
Do you think so wow, I just lost my train of thought, actually. Pause that thought, and I'll raise my hand again once I figure out what I was just about to say.
Okay, yeah, we were talking about FAU and UConn. All right, so what we're going to do next is kind of go through these game by game and just look at some different research points and have some conversations on these. And where I feel our time is best spent is going to be looking at the games between seeds 5 through 8. Seeds 1 through 4, you really almost always want to pick these as chalk. There for sure will be upsets, and the more upsets, the better. But if you start trying to pick which one is going to be the upset, to me, the odds are not in your favor in seeds 1 through 4. And one of the best ways to look at the odds is to look at the Vegas spreads. Every game except for one, Alabama Charleston, has a 10 or more point spread in rounds 1 through 4. And so the odds are the favorite is going to win. Now, it's not going to happen all the time, but this is like playing blackjack. And if you guys know blackjack strategy, if the dealer has a 6 showing, right, and you don't know the dealer's other card, and you have a 16 showing, you don't hit, right? You stay and let the dealer break. I think we all kind of get that. That's what the odds say to do. Does it always work out? No. Sometimes the dealer pulls the 21 out of their ass, right? But if you start mixing it up, if you start hitting your 16 sometimes and staying on your 16 sometimes, that's how you get clobbered. Because then what happens is when the dealer breaks, you already broke and you lose those ones you would have won. When it's better to be consistent in these types of things. So we're going to focus on game rounds 5 through 8, those sets of matchups as far as what we're going to break down. And so since we're on the FAU Northwestern spot, let's dive into this. And so as far as looking at the game, What are some of the main things that you look for in choosing a team? David, what
Larry Bird's attic.
what oh, we got a this is a funny commercial actually with Larry Bird in it.
Allstate, save money and be protected from mayhem, like me.
You got Larry Bird in an
It wasn't
Allstate commercial
all that
now.
long ago that we looked at the
All right, let's pause this.
as the
All right, so here we are, Northwestern and FAU. David, what are some of the main things you would look for in a game like this to try to determine who to take? Because this is an 8-9 game. It's pretty much a 50-50 pick 'em.
Yeah, for sure. And the 9 seeds have a winning record over the last few years, if I remember correctly. I think over like the last 10 years, something like that. But yeah, like you said, it's kind of 50-50. The big thing is with these two teams, I haven't watched them as much, so I have to go on statistics. And Northwestern has the better defense. So I lean towards defense when it comes to the basketball tournament, because everybody knows that it's one and done. But when it also comes down to it, is will they make the shots that count? Florida Atlantic has the 109th ranked defense. Northwestern has 72nd. But Florida Atlantic also has the 16th ranked offense. So it's a flip of a coin. I think I went with FAU just because they're both below the top 50 at that point. It's really a toss up. So I went with the offense on this one with FAU.
Got it. Yeah, that's good. Good takes there. Who else wants to share in this? Alex, what would you look for in a game like this? What makes you think FAU or Northwestern is better suited for this?
Yeah, so for this specific game, again, it comes down to the injuries with Northwestern. I'm more inclined to pick them if they get healthy, but I was just looking in on it. I think one of their starters is Torres ACL, actually, so he's out, but the other guy, 50-50, their big guy, actually. So if he's out, that Vladimir Golden guy for FAU, he's gigantic, right? So I think he eats in the post, and I would probably pick FAU then. But this is like a matchup where I'll probably split between my brackets, kind of flip a coin type of thing, like David said. But one thing I would look for is Northwestern has Boo Buie. He's probably a top 10 point guard in the entire country. He's also, a COVID guy. So this is his 6th year. I think he's like 25 years old. He averages 19 a game. Can shoot probably, I think he shoots 47% from three. So him against John L. Davis will be a great matchup. But again, this is a coin flip with the injuries.
Yeah. Yeah. Injuries are so important for us to be informed of. I mean, that can make such a big difference, especially when we get to Kansas and there's.
And I was going to ask Greg, light bulb came back into my head. Do you think, just real quick, do you think Florida Atlantic losing and not winning their championship is actually helpful, just kind of humbling them? Because they're obviously the best team in their conference, but they lost, right, to Temple, and that was just kind of a fluke. So do you think that actually is kind of a kick in the ass for them, maybe? Or how do you feel about that?
I'm not a fan of the kick in the ass type of thing, unless you're a team who's been, close to undefeated all year. I think I don't think you need a kick in the ass when it comes to March Madness. So I don't see it like that. If a team is winning and they're on a roll, they're hot, their confidence is going to be up. I do think that's part of it. You have to look at how tired and how much energy teams put into winning as well, especially when it comes to teams that weren't expected to play there, like NC State. We'll talk about who's had to play 5 games in 5 days. Before we move on to Cam on this, I'm curious. So in terms of an overall strategy, Alex, you pick different first round games, because I would propose that you should make your best picks in the first round and not start to tinker with moving things around until later. What do you think about that?
So, I mean, it depends on the payout, right, of the tournaments. I have some tournaments where I'm putting in, a couple bucks, like my family league and stuff, where I'll kind of screw around and maybe take some more outlandish picks. But I would say, just thinking back, I would agree on that comment, Greg, where staying consistent. I know I'll have three of my brackets will be the same, and that's going to be like the brackets I put the most analysis into, and then maybe take the opposite in my family pool, or it's not as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I know, some people like to pick lots of upsets just because, like, when they tell you about it, their picks, all they'll mention is that one they picked right. But meanwhile, they have 10 brackets and they basically picked every possible upset. And I'm not saying you're doing that, but I think that, a lot of people will do that in filling these out. I will put out, there's another strategy that I feel applies to this game is when it's 50-50, I recommend you go against what mainstream is doing. And because ultimately we're competing with people, right? And I feel like FAU is a very popular team. People remember them from last year. I feel so strongly that FAU will win this, and I'll give you my reasons in a minute. But when it's really close to 50-50, I would recommend going against mainstream, because that's where you can really start to pick up points in the tournament. Cameron, what would you look for in evaluating a game like this?
Yeah, so I know I can't pick all the higher seeds to beat the lower seeds in the tournament. So in the 8-9, David said earlier that over the past 5 years, that the 9 seed has actually had the number on the 8 seed. They've won 13 of the last 20. So I need to start picking some upsets with the lower seeds. I know you can't really call 8-9 an upset, but I'm gonna go with FAU. And another reason I'm gonna go with FAU is, well, this is a pick'em game, but I got a couple reasons why I want to rock with FAU. They were in the Final Four last year, and they're running it back with the same team. So there's no reason why they can't do it again. So let's see, why not?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest reason that I'm picking them as well. It's just on the experience, having everyone back, having a coach back who did an amazing job coaching that team last year. They shoot the three, they have a big, so they're a balanced team. And so those are all the reasons that I like FAU. And I like experience. I like a coach that has experience, players that have experience, and FAU has those, and they have big wins. They beat Arizona in the regular season this year. If we go unpack their schedule some, and having wins outside of your conference is a big part of this as well. Will, did you have anything to add on that?
I was gonna say the same thing as you, Greg. I'm amazed at their non-conference schedule. They really challenge themselves a lot.
Yeah. It's hard for a school like FAU to get scheduled. People don't want to play you because if they beat you, it doesn't really help them at all. If because you're not a quad one team usually for them, but if you beat them, it really helps you. So it's hard for them to get scheduled, but they were able to get games scheduled. Vegas has FAU favored by 2 in this. So I think that's kind of an indicator as well as to just where things are leaning. All right, so we've covered this first game, and as with any 8-9, we think it could go either way. And there's no real consensus here. It's open for conversation. All right, let's go next to in this bracket to San Diego State and UAB. So San Diego State is the 5 seed here. I gave you my take on them. They're a team that's led by a big. He's a guy that didn't start for them last year. He was on the team that made the run. Most of their starters are gone from last year's team. Very experienced coach. What would you look for in assessing a game like this? Or Will, what is it that you liked about San Diego State?
I think coaching matters, a lot. And I mean, they've always been good. People always think of Gonzaga, but San Diego State's been legit too. So I think they usually perform well in the tournament too. Like last year, they definitely did a lot better, but I could be way off on this. I feel like they've made the Sweet 16 a lot. So I think they have the right talent. I'd be surprised if UAB wins.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, San Diego State, again, they had an amazing run last year. Like Will said, they're well coached. Their conference has been tough. They have 6 teams in the tournament this year. Does anyone else have a take on either of these teams? I have some things that I'll add. Use the Zoom raise of hand if you want to chime in on these games. I don't want to call on people that, aren't familiar with these teams. There's no way any of us can know all of these teams. This is why, having different people here from different conferences is so valuable. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so my big thing is I normally go defense, but with the teams that shoot a lot of threes, if they get cold, you can let them shoot those open shots because they're not going to fall. So I watched some of Alabama Birmingham this last week, and that the guard Axel Yexel, whatever his name is, man, he was getting to the free throw line. So this is one of those games I'm going back and forth on. But I'm picking Birmingham with this one. In their tournament they just had for the American, only the first game they had was close. They blew everyone else out by double digits. And in San Diego State, they've got they've got the coaching, they've got the same roster for the most part. But a stupid team with momentum, that's another thing to be worried about. A team, I say stupid, but a team that doesn't know, they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know that San Diego State's someone to be worried about. So I like Birmingham going into this one as of right now.
Mm-hmm. Cool. The guard you mentioned, was that Johnson? Is that what you said?
Yaxel something. I think
Okay.
that's his first name is Yaxel.
Yaxel Lendenborg.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, yeah, Lendenberg. He seems to have led them in scoring for most of these games here. It's interesting they have lots of different people that have led them in scoring. Yeah, so I watched UAB this weekend as well. I was rooting for USF. That's the home team here in Tampa, who had a great season but didn't make it into the tournament because they lost to UAB. And they didn't have to play FAU. To me, UAB is a team that only made the tournament because they won their conference title. They're not a team that would have made it other ways. And they had to beat USF, who's number one in there, but hasn't played anybody. And they dodged FAU there. They did beat FAU earlier this year in overtime. That's really their only quality win. I don't see a lot there in terms of what they've done. And, one of my themes with teams like this is going to be that they kind of, it's like you blow your nut getting into the tournament, so to say. I feel like that's the teams that see it as such a major achievement to get there. It's very hard to reload emotionally, in my opinion, and get back up again. That would be kind of my case against them. San Diego State, on the other hand, if we look into their full schedule, again, I watched them over the weekend. I hadn't seen them all year, but watched the tournament this weekend. They battled with New Mexico, but lost in the end to a team that shot threes, which it sounds like is what David saw in UAB. So that could be a matchup problem. I don't like teams that are led by bigs. Just looking at their record here, they've beat Utah State. It looks like 2 out of 3 times. I don't know about if there's really any other big wins here that they've had, since this.
They beat Gonzaga this year.
Early in the year, they played Gonzaga, right?
Yeah, they beat them.
They lost to St. Mary's. But I mean, going back to these games, I think you can really start to overthink things. They beat Gonzaga back in December. I don't put as much into that. And I don't think Gonzaga's that good this year. I like St. Mary's, but not Gonzaga. So, and I think if anything, I when I'm looking at something like this, it's more about, this kind of validates my St. Mary's pick a little bit, seeing that win there, and my being down on Gonzaga more than it means for these teams. So I'm for sure still picking them in the first round here. I don't see enough to pick an upset. 5-12 upsets, I think, are about 50-50, I think, as far as teams winning these. All right, so let's go next in this bracket. We're going to skip the 4s because they're likely to roll. Let's look at this BYU Duquesne matchup here. So this is a Big 12 team. I was real impressed looking at just watching the scores with BYU. And then I realized, their win over Kansas was when Kansas was very depleted. And then we saw Kansas lose to Colorado. And that kind of really took a lot out of what I thought of Kansas. I picked BYU to make it to the semifinals in their conference tournament. They wound up getting knocked off by Texas Tech, which is a team, we need to look more into. I don't know that much about them. They battled Iowa State here with a loss. I don't see a whole lot here that's very impressive with BYU. Does anyone have a take on BYU? Did you see them against Houston at all, David?
Yeah, I'll just say that their opponent, you know what? This is the in my bracket, I got whoever this school is, right? There's always a school in the tournament that we've never heard of before. And for me, this is one of them. I ain't never heard of this school before. And you know what? I think they're going to be dancing in this tournament a little bit and get the first round upset. Like you said, BYU hasn't impressed you at all. And this other squad, they just upset VCU to win their tournament. So they're coming into the tourney on a roll, on a hot streak. So I like these guys.
Yeah, Duquesne. I'm not very impressed with BYU, so I think that there's a window here for an upset. Let's see if we can actually figure anything out about this team. Go ahead, Will.
I mean, I don't like BYU. They have a lot of players who play and a lot of players who average a lot of points. So I think that's interesting, but I think a lot of people are down on BYU just for where they're at, I think they've outperformed what people think, especially me. They're ranked still, they're still a ranked team. So
Yeah, I mean, how are they ranked? I don't know. Alex, what do you see in this?
This is BYU is going to win by 30. The Duquesne is just, I mean, they finished sixth in their conference, and their conference is dog shit, pardon my language. I'm really surprised Richmond didn't roll through that conference. And also Loyola Chicago. Those were the two teams that I think should have won their tournament, but I don't think I'm picking Duquesne at all to go anywhere. I don't think I've ever seen them play this year. I might have popped them on once, but I like BYU. BYU can score. They have hit a little bit of a rut as of late, but if the BYU from December or earlier in the year comes out to play, they could actually make a run just because they have they have the Jimmer Fredettes running around shooting threes. They have a couple guys who can really shoot it. So
Yeah. Yeah, good points. I think that would kind of sway me to, while I think BYU is susceptible to an upset, I'm not seeing enough here from Duquesne to really pick them for an upset. What do you think, David?
Yeah, so watching BYU, the few games that I saw them this year, one of them against Houston, they weren't very impressive. Just they live and die on the three. And Duquesne actually has a number 28 ranked defense. And I watched some of their game against VCU yesterday, and they were really doing a great job of forcing bad shots. So, like I said, I like defense. I like momentum. That's why I'm going with Duquesne on this one, especially against the team that lives and dies on the three.
Okay, interesting. Good take. Yeah. It looks like they beat Dayton. It looks like they had to play 4 games to win their conference tournament here, right? So this would kind of fall into my list of teams that maybe weren't expecting to be here.
There's got to be an 11 seed upset this season. The last time all 4 did it,
it's not going to be Duquesne, Cameron.
Back in 2004. Oh, it's going to be New Mexico. It's going to be New Mexico and Oregon.
Agree. Oregon. Yep.
All right. Well, we're coming to those. Let's keep going here.
BYU, Greg, they have 7 guys averaging over 9 points. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's a balanced team.
Yeah.
I think that while any of us can pick any upsets, right? But I think I didn't see anything there in Duquesne. I sure don't have BYU going anything after the first round. All right, let's look next at this Washington State versus Drake matchup here. Now I watched Drake that won their championship game against Indiana State, the goggles team. They had decent athletes, but not like any type of power conference athletes. I wasn't really that high on them. They do have the coach's son they have is a really good player. This guy Divines. He's a two-time conference player of the year. And but he's not, going to be able to get his shots off against a very athletic defender. So I wasn't that impressed with them, but also Washington State, I wasn't impressed with them in the Pac-10 conference either. I know, Cam, you follow the Pac-10 closely. It's so great having people from different conferences here. What's your take on Washington State? They didn't even, make it to the finals against Oregon. You were saying you didn't want them, right? Or what's your take on them?
Yeah, they had a good regular season, but and also my bracket that I filled out. And I think that's the only reason I picked this one today is because I heard an analysis talking about his upsets or a couple of them, and they had Drake. They had Drake upsetting Washington State. Washington State Oregon couldn't beat them this season. Oregon went 0-2 against a lot of teams in the Pac-12, including Arizona and Colorado. But Pac-12 teams have been good this year too, I believe. Colorado's been a good team, and they're in the first 4-in game. That's a scary team to have right there in that game, I believe.
Yeah, let's focus in on this team then. So Washington State, do you like them in this game, or you have them going down to Drake?
No, I got them going down. I got Drake with the upset.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't impressed with just looking at what they've done. Arizona State is not very good this year. They lost to them. Seems like they're beating up on the bad teams in the Pac-10.
And they did good in the regular season too. They beat Arizona twice in the regular season. They whooped up on Colorado, but they didn't look good in the tournament, the Pac-12 tournament.
Yeah. And this to me, this worries me more about Arizona than it says anything about Washington State. So Arizona got swept by this Washington State team. That's a really bad sign for them, in my opinion.
Who's favorite? Is Drake or Washington State favored?
In the Vegas spreads, let's see it.
This got to be 5.5 Washington State.
Probably pretty close here. I think I have it up in one of these browser windows. Let's see.
I feel like it's a closer 11.
Yeah, here they are.
A lot of the analysts seem split between these two teams.
Must have closed the window that had the spreads.
There we go.
Yeah, so it's
pick 'em. Wow.
To pick them 7-10s. 10s, they from what I recall, they have the most upsets, maybe even more than 50-50. The 10s tend to lead. So I think I like Drake here. We haven't heard anything strong in favor of Washington State.
Washington State was a good team all season, though. They ranked top 30 in offense and defensive efficiency, so they played good on both ends of the ball.
Right. Yeah, good points. All right, let's go next to this Mississippi State versus Michigan State. Michigan State's favored by 2. I think we all know Michigan State always seems to play out of their mind. What's your take on this, Alex?
First of all, I completely agree that Michigan State should not be in the tournament. It's absolutely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I think St. John should have taken their place personally, but nevertheless, Izzo is the underdog. When Izzo's the underdog, they usually go to the Sweet 16. So if you want, you can put a $5 parlay on that and make probably $500 because they would have to obviously beat, would it be North Carolina, right? And just Izzo, it's the Izzo magic for a reason. It's very hard for me not to take Michigan State in this game, but logically speaking, Michigan State has so many flaws. It's going to be one of those toss-up games, but Michigan State as an underdog, it's really tough to pick against them based on history.
So Michigan State preseason, weren't they top 15? They were
top 10.
Top 10, yeah. So they really underachieved. To me, that says they have the talent. They just underachieved. Maybe they had some injuries, maybe they didn't gel yet, but I don't think anyone's going to be picking against Izzo. Let's just look into Mississippi State here. We had them on a couple nights when we were watching SEC games. We saw them, and I don't know, Jeremiah follows the SEC a little closer. They have some quality wins here. They beat Tennessee, they beat LSU. LSU turned out to not be so good. They had kind of this losing streak here, but I mean, look how tough that schedule is, right? Kentucky, Auburn, South Carolina, A&M, all four of these teams are in the conference that they lost with here. It seems like they kind of made their living against the bottom of the SEC here, and had just that big win against Tennessee. They had a big win against Auburn earlier in the year. Kentucky swept them. They've played a tough schedule. They beat Northwestern non-conference. We beat Washington State non-conference.
They beat Tennessee twice, I think.
Yeah, they beat them in the tournament last week.
Wow. Yeah, including the tournament. They knocked them out in the tournament, right? Yeah. So they've had Tennessee's number. And to me, that shows, this is a team. If we look at their stats, from what I remember, they're led by a big guy. Which one is Mississippi State here? I'm gonna put on my glasses to read this at the top here, right? So yeah, Walker, he's a guard for Mississippi State, 18 points a game. Yeah, I don't think we can make a case for them against Michigan State, but definitely a team that deserves to be in the tournament with a lot of quality wins. Wouldn't surprise me if Michigan State lost to them, right? It's an 8-9 game. Michigan State, like we said, is favored by 2. I think everyone will be picking them there. All right, so let's move on next to, we're down here now. St. Mary's Grand Canyon. Surprisingly, not that big a spread here, 5.5. That's a real red flag to me. That it's that close for a Grand Canyon team I've never really heard of. Will, did you have something to add?
Yeah, Grand Canyon's best player actually was a recruit from Kansas, and he actually played his freshman year. So Grant Foster, I watched him, he's unbelievable. And for you to have almost 30 wins, that is pretty amazing. No matter who you played, 30, almost 29 and more is hard to beat, So they got a D1, like that Grant Foster, he could be playing anywhere in the country. He played as a freshman at Kansas, so that's a big deal to me.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. Good take on him. Alex, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I was gonna echo that what Will said. That's also something to look into. This is what I think this is the most likely 12-5 upset. St. Mary's phenomenal team, big team. They can play defense. They have trouble scoring. I think it's more than, they're up and down, right? They're playing well lately, and don't let those Gonzaga wins fool you. I think Gonzaga is they're overrated this year. I think, Greg, you would have to agree with that. I think you've been mentioning that. Grand Canyon can shoot and they run it. So it'll be a fast-paced team versus obviously the slow-paced St. Mary's team. But Grand Canyon, they're hot too. They've won, I think, their last 6 or 7 games. And again, they can score. So we'll see what happens. Also, fun fact, their coach is Bryce Drew. He's the guy from Valparaiso back in the day who hit that magical shot in the tourney. So he sure knows how to he sure has some experience in the tournament as being an underdog. So look for that too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think that's the second most famous shot of all time after Leitner's. Well, I like St. Mary's a lot. I didn't know anything about Grand Canyon until this conversation. I saw them beat Gonzaga handily. Both these guards, Mahaney and Marcellonis, I was really impressed with. They were driving it in, getting layups in the run. They had a big guy who could pass the ball. I like St. Mary's a lot. Depending on where they were potentially a sleeper team of mine to the Sweet 16 or even the Final 8. But I really only saw them play Gonzaga that one game, the conference championship game. Let's just look into these teams' schedules for any insights here.
I just think they got a really hard draw, Greg. I think they're a great 5 seed, but
Yeah.
Grand Canyon is a really good 12 seed.
30 wins doesn't impress me if they haven't played anybody. So let's kind of look and see, are there any teams here? I mean, California Baptist, there's very few schools I've never heard of. Tarleton State, Abilene Christian, like this is not a conference with any teams that we've heard of.
There's one for you, San Diego State and Liberty. I think they're decent. They
San
almost
Diego
beat South
State.
Carolina.
Yeah, they beat San Diego State earlier in the year. That's good. Yeah, they played South Carolina and lost. At least they're scheduling somebody good there. Yeah. They're certainly having a star player like that. Those are the types of, that's what you want to see in a team you're going to pick for an upset, that they have somebody that can hit the game-winning shot at the end, especially somebody who's, trying to make a name for himself on a new team. What year is that kid at, you said did he play
He's
last year in
transferred a
Kansas?
lot. So he started at Kansas. He went somewhere else, and now he's here.
Yeah, he's a senior, so he's big too. He's a 6'7" senior. 20 points a game. This is exactly the profile you want to see in an upset team. So I can see why, if you're going to pick some upsets, that would be one to consider. That being said, I'm going to stick with my St. Mary's there. Let's look into this next. Oh, we said we're not doing the 4s, although I think
I think some of the 4s are in trouble.
Bird stuck in
I
the
think
net.
only
Yeah.
Kansas is in trouble.
I'm going cuckoo.
I mean, we can do this game since we're here. Because I think this is a game that's 50-50. What's the spread on this one? Actually, Alabama's favored by a lot, by 9.
Run them off the court.
Yeah.
Hughes is
Agreed.
too good. He's like one of the best players in college basketball, isn't he?
All right, so let's look at what we think Alabama's got here. So they lost to Florida. I liked Florida. Obviously, they had the injury, but they were hot in the tournament. They barely beat Arkansas here. Before that, they lost to the Gators again, lost to Tennessee. They beat Ole Miss, who we said we weren't that. Actually, that's not Mississippi State we looked at. They lost to Kentucky. They beat Florida in overtime. They beat A&M, who's in the tournament. They lost to Auburn. I don't know. I don't really see much here. Here they beat Auburn back in January. I don't see Alabama really accomplishing anything. What they do early in the year, they lost to Arizona. They lost these 3 in a row. That's a tough tournament they must have been in. They lost to Clemson, who I'm not impressed with. Lost to Ohio State.
I mean, they're a one-man show, it looks like.
Yeah, they have a one. Is he a one and done again?
No, I think he was on the team last year. What year is he?
Sears. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
senior. Yeah, they were a hot pick last year, obviously, right? They had the best player in the country last year. Senior guard, 6'1". I don't know. Let's see what Charleston's, if there's anything to give me some hope here for them. Because I'm not impressed with Alabama. I don't see any quality wins here, though.
They played a ranked team early on, I saw. Florida. Okay, it was just Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, so looks like they struggled really early. Well, I didn't have their lineup together. Not really any quality wins here or anything that looks like they could pull an upset. I might have to reconsider that upset. All right, Clemson, New Mexico. Let's dive into Clemson here.
New Mexico's favored. Look at that. That's crazy.
Yeah, Clemson is a 6 seed and they're not favored. Yeah, I don't know how Clemson got in the tournament, to be honest. I don't even, what's their record? Does it say here 21-11.
Yeah,
I
people like
really-
Wake Forest over them. I know.
Yeah, or Pitt, either one of those teams. I mean, so they got knocked off early in their tournament to Boston College. Bad loss to Notre Dame is terrible. I guess they beat Pitt, but Pitt didn't even make the tournament. They beat they lost to NC State.
They beat North Carolina.
Beat North
earlier,
Carolina,
maybe,
yeah.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of their marquee win, I guess, was beating North Carolina.
They've had a lot of close games, it looks like. At least for a little bit, a lot of 1-2 loss games. I wonder if that played a role.
They beat TCU. They're in the
And
tournament.
South Carolina.
Beat South Carolina. Here they beat Pitt again. So they swept Pitt. I guess that would be the argument to put them in over
That's
Pitt.
6 quad 1 wins too, which is pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I see them as like a 9 or 10 seed.
Yeah, I think they got heavily overseeded. You're right there.
Not a 6 at all. And I love New Mexico in that one game. I saw them. Yeah, this was Eddie House. You remember him, the NBA player? This is his
Stuck in Larry
his
Bird's
kid was leading the way for this team.
Hmm.
Oh, you know who else is on this team? Jamal Mashburn's kid. It's like all the guys,
yeah.
it was like a Patino, like the players that played for Patino, their sons are playing for Patino's son. It's kind of funny. Let's see if they have anything to impress us. So they had a hot run in the tournament. And I like their momentum of winning that. Boise State is in the tournament, right? They beat them. They beat San Diego State. Pretty handily, they won all these games. During the year, they lost to Utah State, lost to Boise State. Pretty bad loss to Air Force. UNLV was a bubble team. They lost to them. Here's some more wins against San Diego State, Utah State. Not really any non-conference wins. I guess that's why their seeding is so low. They would not have gotten in the tournament if they didn't win the tournament. So you would think this would fall under my rule of teams that have kind of peaked already. I don't know. Does anybody
I don't
like
think
New
they would've-
Mexico in this?
You don't think they would have gotten in?
Oh.
They probably wouldn't have. You're right.
Yeah, no, they for sure would not have
They were
gotten.
on the bubble, but so that would have been. They probably wouldn't have gotten in, but they could have. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like New Mexico over Clemson, but
Yeah,
as a Kentucky fan, being a Patino guy, kind of my reasoning.
that's a big upset pick. A lot of people are taking it.
Yeah, I'm taking
And for
the
that
upset
reason, it might be
too.
smart to go the other way.
Yeah, I mean, House and
analysis
Mashburn.
on
What's that, Cam? You're picking
Oh,
this
I
one?
was going to say the analysis on New Mexico is they don't turn the ball over and they force a lot of turnovers. And they have also one of the top offenses in college basketball. Also, they won their Mountain West Conference title. So things to take in consideration for an 11 seed going into this game. We're not really comfortable with Clemson. I agree with all you guys. I got New Mexico getting the upset.
Yeah, I like House and Mashburn are, stars of Sons of Stars, and they played really well in that championship game. I think they're rolling. I like them to maybe make the Sweet 16. Let's see who else is in here. So Baylor, we'll skip that one. Dayton and Nevada. Pretty much a pick 'em. Nevada's slightly favored.
What's up, everybody? I'm
Let's unpack their schedule here. Nevada's had some runs in March Madness before over the years. Didn't do well in their conference tournament, got upset by Colorado State. mean, this is supposed to be a tough conference this year, but none of these teams are playing anybody outside of this. They lost to Drake. That's impressive for Drake. Not really any big teams here. We beat San Diego State. Yeah, here's the thing. You either buy into all these teams are pretty good, San Diego State and Nevada and New Mexico, or then, if these are all good teams, then these are good wins. But if these guys are not that good, then, these are not good wins. I think this is one of those conferences that'll either do really good, they'll go like 5-1, or else they'll go like 1-5. We'll start with Alex and then go to Will.
Yeah, this is one I will heavily favor Nevada, and just because I'm very high on the Mountain West. Dayton, a lot of people have said they shouldn't even be making the tournament, actually. Again, they're very overseeded as a 7 seed. Nevada has Jared Lucas, that point guard, if you remember, he's from Oregon State, and Oregon State made a little bit of a run in the tournament, I think a couple of years ago. He's experienced, he can shoot it. And then they have Keenan Blackshear, who's a slasher. So anytime you got an athletic guard who doesn't shoot as much but slashes, and then you got another guard paired with him who can hit the three, that's a dangerous combination in the tournament. So I like this upset with Nevada beating Dayton.
Larry Bird's at it.
Yeah, good take on Nevada. Let's hear from Will.
I think one interesting thing is they both are actually very close to the top 25, which I think is interesting. And Dayton was actually in the top 20 for most of the season. So I think they actually could have, if they would have won the conference, they might have been like a 5 seed. Because, I mean, yeah, like for most of the season, they were actually ranked. So
yeah, I remember seeing that too with Dayton. If you look here in the middle of the year, they had this amazing streak here. They really only lost one game for like all of December and January. And then they just kind of got knocked off to Duquesne. If anything, this tells me that Duquesne team is going nowhere, right? As we look at this schedule from Dayton's perspective. They don't.
Dayton ended crazy. Dayton ended at 23, Nevada ended at 24 in the final rankings. So they both are ranked.
Houston and lost. They lost to Northwestern. Yeah, so not too much to be impressed here with Dayton. I think that that Nevada is a good pick there. And might even be in line to knock off Arizona. I know a lot of people think that after their letdown last year, really the last 2 years, Arizona's let everyone down. It's going to be hard to put any trust in them. All right, let's move over to this side here. Nebraska and Texas A&M. Let's take a look at this. Alex, did you get to see Nebraska in the Big Ten at all this year?
Oh, I'm very familiar with Nebraska. I think David asked about Nebraska in the YouTube chat. Nebraska does have the Japanese Steph Curry, as they call him. His name is Keisei Tominaga, if that's pronouncing that correctly. He is an absolute electric player to watch. He is a great little lefty shooter. The one thing with Nebraska, they can definitely score, but they are terrible away from their home court. Absolutely terrible. So I think this is where you measure up the conferences. I lean, if I were to take 10 brackets, and I would take probably 7 of them would be picking Texas A&M over Nebraska. So just because of that fact that Nebraska just they don't do anything away from their home. So I favor Texas A&M in this one.
Yeah, and Texas A&M is part of what I think has been the best conference in basketball this season, the SEC, and they've got some impressive victories over Florida and or not Florida. I'm sorry, they lost to Florida, but Kentucky and Tennessee.
They beat Florida once.
They did beat Florida once.
Once, yeah.
Okay, and they played them real good in their last game, the game they lost to, or they only lost by 5 in their last one. So that was in the SEC tournament. So yeah, I like Texas A&M.
They get a lot of rebounds. Texas A&M is a rebounding team. So they're going to get a lot of rebounds in every game. If you even look at those stats, they got a lot of people getting getting double digits, and they're different people.
Yeah, Buzz Williams has got this team rolling in the tournament with some momentum. There's the reason they were able to get in.
Yeah, I mean they knocked off Kentucky in the SEC tournament. That obviously got everyone's attention. Jeremiah, what's your take on Texas A&M?
They got really hot. Was it Friday night? They look great. Again, I agree with Cameron. I think this is the best conference in college basketball. It's usually a football conference. It's kind of worked its way to being a basketball conference too. I believe we got 6 or 7 teams in. I lost count, or don't have count exactly. I think it's a good team. I like them to win on Friday.
I gotta mention one more thing, Greg. If you scroll up, they lost to Houston by 2 points. They're 4 points.
They
It's a
played
little
Houston
freaky
tough.
for
Look at
next
this. They
round.
beat Iowa State. They played Houston tough here in this game. They beat Kentucky earlier in the year as well. This seems like a team that can beat anybody, a hot and cold team, with a lot of quality wins here. They seem a little underseeded too, to be in the 8, to be a 9 seed. They look like a 6 seed to me.
14 losses is a lot.
Yeah, but I mean that schedule's brutal. Houston and Iowa State, and as well as the SEC. All right, so where do we leave off here? Here we are. Next up is Wisconsin and James Madison. Everybody's darling sleeper this year. James Madison, 31-3 record. I know Alex, our Wisconsin guy, is here. What do you expect to see happen in this game, Alex?
I expect Wisconsin to roll. I mean, it's James Madison. I think they beat Michigan State first game of the year. If that was that the first game of the year, yeah. Wisconsin beat Michigan State twice this year. I think by 20 points each time.
They beat Illinois, right? Or is that Southern Illinois?
Southern Illinois. James Madison, though, it's obviously a scary team. Because we obviously had the 12-5 upset with the Steph Curry Davidson nightmare that happened to us. James Madison doesn't really have a Steph Curry, but they can shoot and they can score. But again, Wisconsin top 5 strength of schedule. They are top 5 in quad 1 wins. They're clicking at the right time, right? They kind of rolled through the Big Ten tournament. That was my prediction, was Illinois to win it against Wisconsin. So that's a humble brag there. But I mean, they beat Purdue and the referees, which was one of the best wins I've seen from Wisconsin in a couple of years. And then they played Illinois very well. Illinois is a tough matchup for them. But I know it's a trendy pick. Wisconsin is rolling into the tournament pretty hot. They're fully healthy. They got their 6-man back, and with their 6-man, they're 18-5 this year. I look for Wisconsin to beat James Madison, and not really too scared of Duke either. And then I think I got Houston beating Wisconsin in the Sweet 16, if that's correct. That's the matchup. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm with you with all the insights you've given us on Wisconsin. They knocked off Purdue. That was a great win. They beat Northwestern here in the conference tournament. And they had a lot of losses here down the stretch, but
they were injured.
Yeah, knowing that there was an injury makes a big difference.
Their worst loss was, though, to Michigan, which was pretty bad at Michigan. But other than that, they played Tennessee tough this year. They've played Purdue tough. They beat Marquette's ass this year, which is always fun. I was at that game. Beat Michigan State twice, played Arizona. Well, actually, they got their ass kicked by Arizona, though. But James Madison is no joke. 31 wins. They're impressive. And I think they were ranked at one point, if I'm not mistaken. But
I feel like this is one of those conferences that always seems to have an upset. Like a lot of these teams I can remember over the last 10 years having upsets. And I think they're the only ones that made it from this conference this year. James Madison, they basically dominated. This is a good conference, though. So I was looking for a way to pick them. I wish they had gotten one of these other teams like Clemson or Alabama. I just don't see it against Wisconsin.
That would be something if they beat Wisconsin and Duke. I think Seth Davis picked that right away, which would be
Yeah.
incredible.
I
I
think
think
he
it's
was
a
I think he was picking before he really looked at the bracket. He
Or
was
Was it, sorry, Reith, whatever his name was. But yeah, Wisconsin also, they're not the radio people here in Madison are that Wisconsin's very annoyed and they're gonna play with a chip on their shoulder. I could see them winning by a lot too. But again, never say never with the 12-5 upset. I think if this was a 13-4, a 10-7, or an 11-6, I think everyone's opinion changes and they take Wisconsin. I think that just because it says 12-5, the mystique affects the opinions. So we'll see what happens though.
they're my
yeah.
most confident 5 seed, I think. Which it's weird because people think James Madison is like the best 12 seed, but I think Wisconsin is fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a tough draw. I think I agree with you, Will. Wisconsin's the best 5 and James Madison's the best 12. It's too bad they wound up playing each other. All right, who saw NC State knock off UNC and Duke and Virginia? What a run they had in the ACC tournament here. They have a beast of a big guy. It looks like an O lineman and a guard who was just on fire, leading them in scoring. He had been out for a while down the stretch. I see Cam nodding his head. What do you expect in this game, Cam?
Yeah, I like momentum, and NC State is high on momentum right now. You know what I'm saying? They're the ACC champs. And they looked promising to start the season. They started off 11-3, right? They looked real hot, but then they totally went on a skid, losing a bunch of games. But then they got hot again right at the end of the season, winning 5 more in a row, running right through Duke and UNC, 2 blue bloods. That's nice wins to have on your resume. So it's hard to ignore that. Every March Madness has upsets and Cinderella teams. This has upset. I'm not even sure this would be an upset. This just I got NC State continuing their hot streak right now. What do you think, Alex?
I I just hate the ACC. I just think it's just one of the worst conferences. I think the Mountain West is better. I've made that very clear. I enjoyed watching NC State though, and I'm normally a momentum guy, Cameron, but I think their momentum runs out. I think again the Big 12 are
Mhm.
you can make the argument Big 12 at SEC. Big 12 is easily best conference in
Yeah.
basketball, and I think that Texas Tech takes care of them and handles them pretty. I think they handle them pretty easily. Texas Tech's got some beef too, so I don't know if anybody has enough beef for that guy, but we'll see.
I'm curious to see how Texas Tech will do with their new system because this isn't the same Texas Tech team
No,
we're
it's not.
accustomed to in March Madness. Those were defensive led teams. This is the complete opposite team headed into this game, headed with a brand new coach this season. I
I
don't know. I
believe,
don't know
yeah,
if he has that much experience here in the big stage, but I'm curious to see if Texas Tech can handle the
and
big
I think
moment.
they had Terrence Shannon, the Illinois star. Terrence Shannon was on their team when they made that tournament or when they made the championship. So yeah, it's definitely a different team, different style of basketball they're playing now.
And
Yeah, I think
they
that's
came
a
in
really good
third
point, Ken.
place.
Go ahead, Will.
They came in third place in the Big 12. I mean, that's hard to do. You know, Kansas was like fifth or sixth, and they're a 4 seed. Yeah, I mean, the Big 12 was Big 12 and SEC were crazy this year. I don't see them.
I think I don't think the Big 12 is all that, to be honest. But something I wanted to point out about North Carolina State, the last team to win their tournament 5 games in 5 days, UConn in 2010. So Cam talked about it. I mentioned it earlier. I think somebody else did. Maybe it was Alex or Will. But momentum, I think, is a huge thing. So I think they at least knock out Texas Tech. Like I said, Big 12 is nah.
And that's coming from a Big 12 guy here from over in Houston.
It's because he hates
Yeah.
Kansas.
And Texas Tech got steamrolled by Houston in the tournament. So
Yeah.
I was not impressed with how I thought Texas Tech would put up a fight in that game. Houston just blew them right out the water.
Yeah. And I think people remember Texas Tech from that run 2 years ago. So pointing out that it's not the same coach, not the same team, I think that's a really good point that that Cam was making. Um, Texas Tech, they do have a lot of quality wins here against tournament teams, right? BYU, Baylor. They lost to Texas, but they're in the tournament. I don't know how Texas made it. They beat Kansas back here. I don't know if that was when Kansas was injured yet or not. They beat
No,
Oklahoma.
Kansas was healthy during that game. That's when Texas Tech caught my eye, that Kansas game. They were healthy.
Yeah, so they have some quality wins here. State, I watched all the ACC tournament, all the games because I'm here in Carolina this time of year, and State was just rolling, man. They were unbeatable. And what's interesting is that the big guy, right, who everyone thinks is this unstoppable force, he does not lead them in points, rebounds, or assists.
He's a six man.
They had this other guy, Diarrhea, who was like scooping up all the rebounds. They have a really nice put together team, and I feel like they're going to be like the popular Cinderella pick this year. I think that's one of the main reasons I'm not picking them. I just feel like I've been burned by picking these hot teams before, and I'm right here in Raleigh where they are, and seeing the way they celebrated having won the ACC tournament. They haven't won the ACC tournament since 1987. And I just feel like they might be emotionally spent. The 5 games in 5 days and now turning around and playing again. I am picking Texas Tech in this, even though, if NC State is winning, they'll be fun to watch. They're like the team I'd like to cheer for. And I've learned to kind of resist those types of picks that don't usually tend to work out. All right, let's go. Next up is, Florida's against the play-in team. So we'll skip that for the moment and go down to this is a game that
Florida, I think, will play Colorado, and Colorado was a ranked team all season. That'll be a good matchup. But
and
I
they
got
just
Florida.
lost their starting center too. His leg popped out of the skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good note. And that's why I got Florida moving on to play Marquette in the next round.
You're saying, Florida's with that injury, Florida's the one who had their center injured. That makes me worried that Colorado could upset them there.
This is
Let's
going to
dive
be
into this game here because I'm gonna, whoever wins this game, I'm going to take to beat Purdue. I do not trust Purdue going anywhere. And I was really intrigued with TCU and some of their guards. I didn't watch them at all. They weren't on my radar at all. But just watching some of the people picking TCU in this really impressed me.
I'm picking Utah State. I think their strengths match up to TCU's weaknesses very well. Utah State is one of the most efficient 2-point teams in the nation. What that tells me is they're dominant in the paint, and so they like to go inside. And TCU, I was reading their team report card. They're not very good at defending the interior. So that's something to consider here, and that favors Utah State.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I mean, again, this is if you buy into the Mountain West Conference, then Utah State has some quality wins there. But if you think some of those are suspect and go with the Big 12 team,
TCU, I mean, Iowa State did it earlier in that same week, but TCU and Iowa State laid out the blueprint on how to beat University of Houston. You have the big athletic defenders crashing the boards. That's how you do it. And TCU is, we don't really talk about them, but they're a very athletic team. And they're the 31st ranked defense.
Yeah.
And like I said, defense is key. So if you're a top 30 defense, that'll get you out of the first round.
Yeah, the thing that really caught my eye was this win over Houston that Dave just mentioned there. I mean, that shows me they can beat anybody on any given day. And I'm just looking for a reason to have somebody there to knock off Purdue. And that's it for me.
You're crazy, Greg. Purdue's got the guards this year. I don't see it, man.
Purdue does not have the guards.
You know
I
they're
agree with
fun.
Greg. Purdue's guards are, for lack of a better term, they're bitches. They're soft. Their
Okay.
best guard is their seventh man, which is Purdue. Purdue is just a conundrum this year. They're obviously very good. They're probably going to go to the Sweet 16 again. I think they're going to be the first one seed to lose. But I know Greg's taking a shot in the dark there. But Purdue's guards definitely, they can't defend. They are a big foul hunting team. They can shoot though, Will, so that might help them. But I again, and I'm very biased too. I'm not going to lie.
I
I'm
think
so
with
sick and tired of
Purdue,
Purdue. So
I agree with Will. I think this is the exact reason why Purdue does successful in the tournament. Braden Smith has took a lot of heat. He didn't when they lost in that first round last year. He didn't show up. A lot of people blame that game on him. So I expect Braden Smith to really step up for Purdue, and him and Zach Eddy's pick and roll game to be unguardable. That's a nice pick and roll game to bring out on the
I
floor.
mean, Alec, they beat every ranked team too, and they've beaten Arizona, they beat Marquette, and they beat Tennessee. That takes a lot, man. But we don't have to go into that.
That's the regular season. We'll see what they do in the tournament. And I think, Alex made one of the best points about this. Don't want to steal your thunder, but about the Big Ten officiating and how it's going to be different now. Go ahead and give us your thoughts on that, Alex.
yeah, so my big thing that we'll see. I think part of the reason why they went down last year was they didn't get the same whistle. And like I said, it does sound like a classic, emotional take from me saying the officiating. If you watch that game on Saturday, I say the Badgers won 5-8. You look at all the national pundits, it was just insane, the officiating. It was 30 Wisconsin fouls to 17 Purdue. Purdue shot 20 more free throws. Zach Edey had 63% of his points come from offensive rebounds and free throws. He's not that skilled. He's not going to do shit in the NBA. And Braden Smith is good, but we'll see if they get officiated different in the NCAA tournament. You can look at it as if they're going to get upset as one of the first, one seeds. And they foul hunt, and that's fine. I mean, it's fine during the regular season, but they're not going to get the Big Ten officials in the tournament. So
to me, it's not even about the, different officials in the tournament. I feel like the Big Ten, this is their guy. The Edey makes the Big Ten look amazing, right? He's a national player of the year. So the conference is gonna, officiate him so that he can succeed. And then when he gets into March Madness, what happened last year is he didn't get the whistle, didn't go to the line. And this happens with a lot of big guys when they come to the tournament.
Yep.
So I'm taking TCU to take down Purdue in this spot. And we got to make a few bold picks that are different than everybody.
I like it.
So Alex mentioned something, was making a reference to Virginia earlier in the chat. How, the last time a 1 seed lost to a 16 seed, they went all the way to win the championship. Now, I don't expect Purdue to win the championship. The Final Four at best, Elite Eight at worst. I can't see TCU beating them. But I do think, because kind of like what happened with Virginia, it was all about the legacy. Like, are we going to be the 16, the first team that lost to the 16, and we didn't do anything. We just kind of rolled over the next year. I see Purdue coming back with some fight. I mean, those are some big boys. If they just toughen up just a little bit, it's really hard to beat them. And that's why I'm stuck if Tennessee will beat them or not. But I can't see TCU beating them, just because TCU is very, very athletic, but they're not necessarily, the best basketball players.
They beat Houston. If they
Purdue's
beat Houston, they can beat
Very,
anybody.
very athletic. Very
Purdue-
athletic team can play defense. Defense is athletic, but the basketball, the offensive side of it, and Houston can't make a basket to save their lives. That Houston will be the first 1 seed out of the tournament.
Yeah, I
David,
think
don't
Houston-
sell yourself short, man.
I'm with
Houston's
David.
If we get past Duke, there's no way we make it past Kentucky.
You mean Wisconsin?
You got to be worried about Texas A&M, man. You only beat them by 3 points.
I'm not worried about A&M.
They're kind of the same team, but okay.
Okay, so I feel like David, I agree with everything you said that Purdue needed to toughen up. They're going to be a team that came back. They toughened up. They played tough all year in the regular season and didn't get those whistles. And now they're going into the tournament where it's going to be standardized whistles, and that's what's going to fall apart. Their own, effort to toughen up, I think, will
Their
backfire
pathway,
on
though,
them.
their pathway is so ridiculously easy, though. I think. Greg, obviously you're going to take TCU to beat them, but just if you're going chalk there, it's like they're playing Utah State. TCU don't match up well. Gonzaga sure as hell does not match up well. Kansas, Hunter Dickinson, if he plays, maybe he can guard Edey. I'm not a Hunter Dickinson guy, but their pathway to the Elite Eight, it seems very easy.
And
Yeah.
they're the worst 8 seed, right? I mean, I think that's the worst 8-9 matchup with all the other ones. So that's why I think Purdue has a good chance. Like, all the other 8-9 matchups are scary, I think.
Yeah, they were all teams we knew something about. I didn't know anything about these two teams, but I look at TCU and I like them. So, all right, let's go down to Kansas. We're going to skip because it's all dependent on the injuries. Let's go to Oregon, South Carolina. We got our Oregon resident Cam here.
Preach, Cam, preach.
All right, guys. So this team reminds me a lot of that 2019 Ducks team that did the same exact thing. Okay, that was Peyton Pritchard led that team, and we have a Peyton Pritchard 2.0, and his name is Jackson Shellstad. He is money at the mid range. Okay, and then we also got 2 more guys, Jermaine Kuznard, who played at South Carolina. So he's got a little chip on his shoulder this game. Okay. And he's been playing, he's been great as he returned for his senior year, as well as Nafale Dante. Dante is a dominant center, and he is the whole reason, him and Dana Altman. Okay, this is just when we look at the history and what the team has done before, Dana Altman gets the team peaking at the right time. And also what they do is they rely on defense. So these young players, they're learning the defensive system. So their defense is getting a lot better getting into this tournament, hence whooping on Arizona. But we had to sweat it out at the end. The offense got a little stale. But Dante, man, I think he's going to be one of those breakout performers here in March Madness. He is a dominant center. He's finally healthy. And this was Dante. He was on the team on 2020 with Peyton Pritchard. That was his senior year. Ducks were going to be a 1 seed in that tournament, but they couldn't participate because that was the COVID year. And Dante was healthy that season, and then he hasn't been healthy ever since. And they've wanted to get back to this moment, and they shouldn't even be in this moment right now because they're playing with 8 scholarship players due to injuries and people transferring and getting kicked off the team and blah, blah, blah. But Dana Altman, they've done this before as a 12 seed. And guess who when they made that run, they lost to Virginia in the Sweet 16, and now they played a really tight game. And Virginia went on to win the national championship that season. Oh, and then my other point about South Carolina is I believe they got gypped on the seeding a little bit. I think they're an elite team. And same thing with Oregon. I don't think they should be an 11 seed. I thought they should have been maybe in the 8-9 range because they are the Pac-12 champs. Yeah, it was a skitty season, but that was due to injuries and whatnot. But we are clicking at the right time.
Yeah, so the spread on this is a 1.5, and which means pretty much like you said, both teams are pretty closely seeded here.
And South Carolina is susceptible to good defensive teams, and Oregon is striving at the defensive end right now. We just need Dante to not get in foul trouble, because if he gets in foul trouble, then that's when Oregon's in danger. And I just want to say Dante, in my opinion, as a Ducks fan, is the greatest big man we've had play for our team. That's better than Bull, Chris Boucher, Jordan Bell. And those were all the same type of player. You need that dominant shot blocker right there in the middle of the defense. And this guy cleans up the glass so well. Man, I'm excited to see this dude play.
All right. Great take there. Lots of insights into Oregon. Alex, what did you have to add to that?
So I really like Cam's points on how Oregon's clicking at the right time, or Oregon. So first of all, let me clarify. I always say Oregon. It's Oregon. There's a town of Oregon next to Madison, Wisconsin. So it's Oregon, right? That is the correct pronunciation.
Yes, that's the correct.
Okay.
Yep. But there's plenty of people that pronounce it the way you pronounce it as well.
Perfect. Okay. But anyways, yes. I mean, this is a pretty juicy, upset pick here. South Carolina, I know them. I know their style because it's what Wisconsin used to do under Bo Ryan. Lamont Paris used to be the assistant coach back in the early 2010 for Wisconsin. He was actually, if Greg Gard were to get fired this year, which when the Badgers were losing 5 in a row earlier this year, that was a big talk. They were looking at hiring Lamont Paris. He just got extended at South Carolina, obviously doing a great job. They're a defensive team, and Cam is right. They are going to struggle to score against Oregon since Oregon's starting to pull it together defensively. I think this is, for betting purposes, this is going to hit the under for sure. But again, I think it's a juicy pick too, taking Oregon, because Dana Altman is a mastermind in the tournament as well. You have to look at that historical, data.
I think the winner of this game makes a deep run in the tournament, because South Carolina, like I said, is an elite team. They got nice wins this year against Florida, Kentucky. I think they beat Tennessee as well. So very good wins. But I believe this will be a very good game, right down to the wire. Winner makes a run. Hopefully they can upset Purdue and get into the Final Four.
Yeah, so I watched the conference championship game. Oregon played out of her mind. Dante, like you said, didn't miss a shot the whole game. And, I think it's interesting. Like, we always talk about injuries, how important injuries are. Like, you got to know if Kansas's players are hurt or not. But there's another side to injuries that most people don't know about, is a player like Dante was out for the first 70% of the season. And that's why Oregon's record is where it is. So it's like, it's not a current injury. It's an injury that happened all year. And then the guy's just coming back. And this team's a lot better than their record because he's coming back. I think, he's not an NBA prospect, right? He's a hustler. He's great for the college game. I don't see him going anywhere beyond this, but he's one of those guys that can just hustle and rebound. And, against a team like South Carolina that doesn't really have anything marquee, that's enough. The momentum, the coaching, as you mentioned, an experienced coach. I see enough here for Oregon to win this game. I don't know about beating Creighton or going any further, but I think that'll be fun to look at. So our last game is Texas, and they're in they have a play-in game.
Would you guys say that
They don't deserve to be in.
Oregon, South Carolina, is that the top matchup of the first round?
He's here.
I feel pretty confident that's the best matchup of the tournament. Can we say that?
I can agree. I can agree with that one.
Well, I mean, an 11-6, right? The 8-9 should be the best matchups of the first round. I know the first game, they usually put what they think is the best game on first, and the first game is Michigan State, Mississippi
That's
State.
I like that one.
That's what that's
Actually, the first game is going to be FAU Northwestern.
That's another good one.
Yeah, the 8-9 games usually are there. But as far as like an 11-6, I think you're absolutely right, Will. That's definitely the best of all the 11-6s that's out there. All right, so we covered all the 5 through 8 games tonight. And what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to move forward the first 4, move forward the ones we picked from tonight, and start to look a little deeper into this. So, because I definitely learned a lot tonight that's going to help me with a lot of my picks. I'm sure that you guys all did too. Also, tomorrow night, we're going to be covering an NBA game. There's a great game on tomorrow night. It could be a Western Conference preview between the Nuggets and the T-Wolves. So we'll have that on as our game of the night tomorrow. I think it tips off 9:30. We'll be talking picks tomorrow night. And then Wednesday, most every night this week, we're on at 9. We're testing the 9 o'clock slot all week, including Thursday and Friday. We'll be watching the actual games together in March Madness. Wednesday, we're going to start at 7:30 and cover the Celtics Bucks game, since that looks like an Eastern Conference Finals showdown. So that's our schedule for this week. Great seeing everybody. Have a great rest of your night.